It's Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and we have a slight risk down here in the southeastern corner of the United States, as well as a large marginal risk which spans all the way from the central to northern upper plains into the Midwest, then into parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, then back down into the Southeast as well, all the way into the southwestern tip of Florida. Our main risk area is going to be fueled by a 15% risk of severe winds down here in the Southeast. And then we have a large 5% risk of severe winds, which spans our entire plains, Midwest, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic and Southeast risk area. And then our hail risk is going to be a little bit more sparse. We have a 5% risk of hail down here in the southeast up into the southern mid-Atlantic. Then we also have another 5% risk of hail up here in the upper central plains. And then lastly, we kind of have a lone isolated tornado threat out here in the Midwest, spanning from parts of eastern Nebraska into northern Iowa into the southwestern corner of Wisconsin. Here's our simulated reflectivity from the HRRR in the southeast, and we can see that about around midday to early afternoon, we get evidence of storms all the way through our southeastern risk area. And as we move through the afternoon, as we get towards the evening hours, this is when they're really expected to peak in intensity and mature, when that low-level jet starts to kick in around 7 to 8 p.m. And in this enhanced state, these storms will be producing a almost entirely wind and hail threat, with the very small threat of possibly an isolated tornado or water spout. These storms are going to be initiated by a large frontal zone draping across the eastern United States and a couple of embedded spinning low pressure system, which could help to intensify storms near those. And then the convergent zone along the sea breeze and the inland breeze in Florida will help to initiate the storms down here. And this will also be coupled with very hot temperatures, which could also help to initiate storms. Here is our Midwest simulator reflectivity, and we can see that scattered storms from yesterday, which would have developed into a mesoscale convective system, will leave a remnant low across the region and then a reinforced boundary. And what's going to happen as we move into midday and the afternoon? We'll get some storms in this region around parts of eastern Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin, with a possibility of some of them having a discrete nature in the early stages before they turn into a line. And that is one of the reasons why we have a isolated tornado threat in this region. Pushing further into the afternoon and into the evening, we see our storms chug along for a bit before they get a hint of falling apart, before they kind of get rejuvenated by that low-level jet around sunset. Then after that, they fall apart officially and just become rainmakers in this region. Another interesting area is going to be the high plains convergence zone around mid-afternoon. We're going to see a couple of storms back here, which could pose the threat for hail and severe winds. Here are 500 millibar winds, and we can see here, moving into our area with the largest tornado threat, we see a shortwave moving across the region here. That's going to help fuel that. Then we see a little shortwave back here in the upper central plains, which is also going to help to fuel that threat of hail creating storms back there. And then our ridge, which has been really persistent over the past couple of days and has been causing that large heat wave, is not only going to bring some mid-level flow to our southeastern risk area, which could help to initiate and intensify storms, but it's also going to de-amplify quite a bit. If we go back here to a earlier look, it looks quite a bit larger and stronger, but as we move throughout the day, it's going to get quite a bit smaller and weaker. So around peak storm time, it's going to have mostly dissipated, which is going to allow for more storm coverage and upscale growth. And then additionally, we see westerly flow across the northern United States, which could be cause for storms up here in parts of the Midwest and southern Northeast. And of course, we have some troughing down here in our southern plains convergence zone. So the threat for some thunderstorms, which could cluster and reach severe intensity, is definitely a possibility down there. And then our 700 millibar winds are going to be pretty strong up here in our isolated tornado threat region tomorrow. So that is another reason for that 2% marginal risk. And then we have some 700 millibar flow down here in our southeast region, which could be cause for possibly a water spout or weak tornado with those storms. Here is a sounding from our southeastern risk area, and we can see that our photographs aren't going to be very favorable for any types of severe weather. Our low-level helicity is going to be low, and our low-level shear is going to be low, and our bulk updraft sustaining / spinning shear is going to be quite low as well. So our shear vectors are going to be pretty low, but that's not going to be the main reason for our severe weather tomorrow. We're going to have higher LCLs, which is going to be more indicative of a wind threat. We see some interesting veering going on here, which could help possibly organize storms. And most of all, we see a very moist and warm environment out here, which will absolutely help to be able to support storms. We do see some capping, but it's pretty confident that it's not really going to be that much of a big deal and storms are going to break that cap. We also see some dry air loft, which could help to accelerate downdrafts and support that threat for severe winds. Then we also see pretty high mid-level lapse rates along with some cape up here near our freezing boundary. So that also fuels the possibility of hail with these storms. And our instability out here is going to be pretty solid, eclipsing 4,000. Our precipitable water is going to be quite high, eclipsing 1.9 inches. So that could also help to support that severe wind threat. Then our downdraft cape is going to be over 1,450, which will also help to support that severe wind threat. And then our 3 cape is going to be nearing 100, which would support all hazards of severe weather, but mostly that wind threat, as tornadoes and hail are going to be mostly off the table tomorrow, but not a zero chance of occurring out here in the southeast. A sounding from our Midwest tornado risk region reveals pretty quickly why there's that 2% marginal tornado risk out here. Our hodograph has some curving in it, and our low-level helicity is going to be over 180, and our low-level shear is going to be over that 20 knot threshold, as well as our bulk level shear isn't going to be insane, but it's going to be 32 knots, which would likely support some organized storms. We see some veering in our winds, which is going to help to support rotating updrafts. Our lowest cloud level is definitely low enough to support a tornado risk. We have a very moist environment out here, which would be supportive of all hazards of severe weather. Then we see some dry air loft, which could possibly mean more conducive environment for severe winds. However, we do see that our mid-level lapse rates are going to be quite low, even though we do have a decent bit of cape right here near our freezing level. Our lapse rates are going to be so low that hail is not really going to be that much of a threat out here. And storms could have some difficulty organizing super quickly, but our cape down here is going to be nearing 4,000, so definitely enough to support storms with that juiced up atmosphere. Our precipitable water is going to be 1.69 inches, and our downdraft cape is going to be eclipsing 1,100, so that could also help to support that threat for severe winds. And then our 3 cape is going to be over 231. So that's another reason why there's a possibility of severe winds and tornadoes out here in this region. So in summary, tornadoes are definitely going to be a possibility out here, as well as severe winds and maybe some very small hail, but that's definitely not the main risk in the Midwest.